For our next panel, we have with us two well-known global brands who have ventured into the Indian market and are here to talk about their journey, their challenges faced, lessons learned, and of course, the ultimate success achieved. Joining us to moderate, we have Rishi Jaitley, CEO TimesBridge, and our panelists, Raghav Gupta, Managing Director India and Asia Pacific, Coursera, and Devashish Sharma, India Country Head, Wattpad. Over to you, Rishi.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to our panel here. My name is Rishi Jaitley. I'm the founding CEO of TimesBridge. We are the Times Group's business of the Times Group that helps select few top-tier global companies each year enter, expand into, and ultimately win and lead in India. Over the last number of years, we've helped companies as varied as Uber, Airbnb, Coursera, Headspace, Wattpad, Stack Overflow, and many others, including nonprofits, not just lean into India, but lead in India. And so today we're going to talk a little bit about how top-tier companies and top-tier executives, how they've thought about India over the years, how they've actually operated and led in India, and what they think about India in sort of the 2020s. I am honored to be joined today by Raghav Gupta, who is the Managing Director for India and Asia Pacific of Coursera, one of our portfolio companies at TimesBridge, and also by Devashish Sharma, the country head, India country head for Wattpad, the Toronto-based startup that we've been proud to partner with as well over the last number of years. Raghav, Devashish, thanks so much for joining me and us here at ThinkIndia from the Times Group.
Happy to be here, Rishi, and good to meet Devashish as well. Thank you.
Same here.
Great. Well, why don't we start sort of big picture, if that works, sort of, I'd love to kind of go back, obviously, and talk sort of about why India. If you think back a few years at your own company, obviously both of you joined your companies at sort of varying stages of thinking around India. But big picture, most of the story companies like yours have heard and many people hear about India is just really the numbers. India's big, India's big, India's big. Is there from where you sit, was there something else in the air at your companies when that conviction around India was developing, whether you were there or not, or what was it about India from where you sit at a key inflection moment, however long ago we may be talking, that really created conviction around India at your company, or even in your own mind, above and beyond sort of the sound bites we're all familiar with? Love to hear how you guys think about that. Raghav, do you want to maybe take an initial stab, and then we'll go to you, Devashish?
Yeah, I'm happy to get us started. And to set a little bit of context here, so Coursera was launched by our founders in 2012, and I think we set up an office in India, which was at your offices, I think back in 2015.
Right.
And as you know, and as many of your audience members would know, Coursera is an online education platform, right? So bringing content from universities, from companies to learners and companies in India. And I think the kind of response that we'd seen online on Coursera before Coursera actually came and set up physical presence in India was exciting. There were, lots of people coming to Coursera, taking content from various universities. So we could already tell that there's a fairly large demand for Coursera in India. And then, when you look at the macros, it made a lot of sense. Education is important in the country. In general, the supply of quality education is insufficient, and a large English-speaking market and the regular macros that one would imagine. What we did do in 2015, which is when we set up an office and I kind of took over from early 2017, is initially Coursera's business was a B2C business. We were serving learners in their individual capacity, and that's what Coursera was doing in India as well. And then in 2016, 2017, we launched our institutional business with the intent of working with companies as companies were starting to also double down on saying, look, skilling is important because technology is changing, the way we all work is changing. And so companies were starting to invest in employee skilling as well. And so we started with focusing on Coursera for Business in India. And it so happened that back in 2016, 2017, some of the largest partnerships that we signed were Axis Bank in India, Manipal University in India, and these were amongst the largest partnerships globally. So both at a macro level, like I said, education is important, English-speaking population, but also these signals about large enterprise-level partnerships that we had signed were giving Coursera the signals that this was an important market to definitely be.
What I love about your answer is that, while again, a lot of companies will study sort of the academic data around India, what's interesting here is sort of responding to existing demand or existing energy from India, inbound, right, from consumers and businesses, but also what you pointed out, Raghav, which is a little bit more of a cultural observation, right, around the value of education in a market, right, that I think is also important to keep in mind when companies are thinking about a full-fledged entry into the market. Devashish, what's your take on that kind of at Wattpad around the genesis of conviction and the evolution of conviction on why India? I'd be curious how you think about that.
Sure. Also, I'll share some more context on Wattpad.
Sure.
So Wattpad as a platform is a global entertainment company and the world's leading social storytelling platform, right? And currently we have over 94 million people around the world who use the platform to discover and share stories from any genre that you can possibly imagine. The key over here is that all these users are spread across the world. And so from day one, the company had a vision to create something which could be used by anyone and everywhere, no matter where they are, but connected to the internet, right? So with that particular insight, that became the natural DNA of the company. And that is also one of the key reasons why not only we have a global user base, but also if you look at our team, it's also quite spread out across every major region that you can think of, right? US, Europe, APAC, and so on and so forth. So specifically when we come to India, it wasn't really a question of making an investment into a new market because that was something the company was already used to doing. But what really gave us conviction was twofold. So one is the macros, as you mentioned, right? Like if we talk about mobile and internet penetration, especially after the Geo moment in 2016, it has the largest penetration and the cheapest data cost, very ripe field for any digital business to set a footprint in India, right? But if you look at a cultural aspect, India has always been a place where a lot of storytellers have existed, and the whole society really values storytelling as an art form, whether that is in the form of publishing or if in movies, we know Bollywood is one of the largest industries in the world, right? So that particular piece really excited us. So specifically, if we look at the macros, whether mobile or internet penetration, especially after Geo moment in 2016, it has one of the highest mobile and internet penetration on the planet, which makes it a very ripe field for any digital business to expand their business in India, right? And this coupled with our existing rapid growing online community of readers and writers that we had in the country, writing stories in more than 10 languages, including English, Hindi, Marathi, Tamil and Malayalam, gave us like a lot more conviction to look at the opportunity in a more closer manner and really double down on our investments, which we started doing in 2018. So since then, we have seen countless authors and both well-known and indie authors come to the platform to grow their audiences. And this really excites us to, keep on moving the flywheel forward so that we grow our community to the largest form.
Well, and what's interesting, thanks, Devashish, about your take on this is one, by definition, it sounds like I'm hearing two things again, separate from kind of the data you see sort of in a spreadsheet around India, which is kind of pervasive and everywhere. One is Wattpad, almost by definition, as a self-serve platform from the beginning, was global. I first heard of Wattpad when I was a Twitter executive years ago in Southeast Asia. I know you're very big in many Southeast Asian markets, and I was struck how much energy there was around this writing platform in Southeast Asia, but again, around culture, right? Kind of the importance of storytelling built in at a native level in India. I thought we could talk a little bit about, you both have alluded to some amount of localization or local thinking, local know-how happening for both of your respective businesses. Raghav, we'll start with you. You talked a little bit about, obviously kind of the consumer business, and then the evolution of enterprise and institutional in India. Localization is kind of can feel like a strong, scary word for global companies. How do you think about how Coursera has listened to and evolved with and in the Indian market, not necessarily on the product side, which is I think what a lot of people assume, but whether it's on the business model side or customer channel side, how has, and has that resulted, does that just, accumulate over time? Is it something in the DNA? Does it take a local leader to, evangelize? I'm just curious how you think localization has happened for you all.
Yeah, yeah. So I'd like to add, right, for us, India has become very significant in the Coursera scheme of things. After the US, it's the largest single consumer base that is on the Coursera platform. And, Coursera globally is about 85, 87 million learners. The US is about 17, 18 million. India is now close to 13 million learners. Used to be about a million back in 2016. So just in terms of sheer number of learners on our platform, it's the second largest after the US. And I say this because I think what the approach that we've taken will make sense in the context of the size and scale of Coursera. And actually, last year, especially when the pandemic hit and online education saw a massive boost, like many, many online platforms, we've seen over the last year and a half that the number of courses and enrollments consumed on the Coursera platform in India is actually higher than it is in the US. So in terms of the consumption, it's actually larger than the US. And given some of that context, Rishi, there isn't a framework in my mind that we've applied, but I'd broadly say global for the lack of a better framework here. So some things are just global, which make a lot of sense, right? So Coursera is very focused on learner first. We are continuing to be learner first in India. Coursera attracts a lot of high quality talent that comes and work with us globally, and we've done that in India as well. The team is 150 odd people. It used to be 5 people when I joined, so it continues to be able to attract a lot of high quality people. There are certain segments of the business like Coursera for Business where what we take to a tech company, what we take to a telecom company, what we take to an auto company is the same around the world because you want to bring the best, the most cutting edge to these institutions. So that is the global part of being global. Mm-hmm. It's largely the same product. At the same time, what's interesting is back in 2018, 2019, on an education platform, there weren't as many students as one would have imagined. There were more working professionals. So we launched a platform back in 2019, which is called Coursera for Campus, which was designed in India, which was piloted in India. It was launched in India in October 2019, and then we launched it from India for the world. And that has become a sizable part of what Coursera is currently doing, which is working with universities and colleges around the world in helping them get ready for a post-COVID world, in helping them get their students ready for a post-COVID world. Right. And we launched this platform in New Delhi back in October 2019. In February last year, there were 30 universities around the world using Coursera for Campus. And today there are upwards of 4,200 universities and colleges around the world using Coursera for Campus. So as a part of being local, lots of learning and insight, and actually a Silicon Valley company saying, look, we'll think about a platform, obviously built in, in the US, but a lot of thinking, a lot of go-to-market done in India as well. And I'll just take one more example and maybe pause with that. We've had top global institutions teach on our platform, in the US, in Europe, and so on. But we were very underrepresented in terms of Indian institutions on our platform, right? And very thumb rule kind of a thing to say that maybe the top 5%, the top 7% of India knows, the top global universities, so the Stanford and the Yale and the Michigan and so on. But 50% of India knows the IITs and the IIMs and so on and so forth, right? And what we've done over the last year or so is we've started going out and partnering with a lot of the leading Indian institutions and saying, let's bring you on board the Coursera platform to take that high quality learning to Indian students, but also global students. So again, an approach which is about bringing the best of the market, but taking that to the market and also globally to the world. So lack of a good framework, but a local kind of a framework.
No, but sometimes, and I've done these things in my career too. Sometimes there's less of a framework at the front end. It's just the cumulative result of perseverance and perspiration leads to something that's a blend of global and local? And I think in your answer, obviously, is a lot of local effort, right, on the Coursera for Business side, on the university side, on the learner side. But there's a lot of global insights too, right? I mean, it's a reminder that, for all of our folks watching and listening, Think India today, that Indian customers do have a propensity for global standards, for global products, for global brands. We are aspirational consumers, which is why I think you have so many global companies that do well in the Indian market. Devashish, what
Yeah.
about you? How do you think about localization? Sort of, what does that mean, or what has that meant to you and to Wattpad in the context of your India go-to-market? Obviously, you guys have done so many partnerships in India with publishers and others. I'm just curious how that's happened.
Sure. Yeah, I was actually trying to figure out the framework for ourselves. I would say it was led by two major things. I mean, one thing I mentioned already was that we have been, as a company, focused towards creating a product which could be used by anyone who has access to internet, right, regardless of where they are. And this focus actually enabled us to create something which could be used by people in India, no matter where they are. For example, they could be in a metro city, or it could be tier 2, tier 3 towns. And there are even some towns where we have a lot of readership where somebody like me who grew up in India has never even heard of. So, for example, Akola, Jalgaon, these are all places which are, if you look on the map, not many people will be able to point out, but they have a very thriving Wattpad community of writers and readers over there, right? One of our top writers, her name is Hermione. She actually comes from a small village in Manipur, and this is a story that really fascinates me. The village is called Khangshim, which has less than 1,000 people. Manipur is a state in northeast of India. She discovered and started writing on Wattpad at the age of 16. And in the next 4 to 5 years, her stories got more than 20 million reads, not just from India, but from all over the world, right? And she this year became one of our top paid writers. She now also makes money from the platform. So such success stories encourage us to believe that we have a product that could be used by real people from real parts of the world that may not have mainstream attention. So one is on the product side, but if we zoom out, for example, on what has worked otherwise, I would say partnerships have definitely been the second pillar, and partnerships not just in one vertical, but across multiple pillars, I would say. One of them, I think, key one this year has been with India Times Lifestyle Network, where we joined hands to create a sub-brand called Story Collective. The idea was that we want, like, our core audience being Gen Z, we wanted to really encourage more diversity and curate stories that matters to them. Because in mainstream publishing and mainstream entertainment, you usually find stories that caters to everyone. So our whole effort was towards creating a safe space where we could highlight and showcase Indian Gen Z writers' talent, but at the same time emphasize on the themes and topics that relate and matter to Indian Gen Z at heart. And that became one of our tremendous partnerships this year. I mean, we are hitting almost north of 600 million minutes of reading time on the platform per month. That is one of the most successful partnerships we've had. Besides that, we also partnered earlier this year with Government of Maharashtra, where we joined hands to run one-of-a-kind creative writing contest for all the students across all government schools in Maharashtra. And we got more than 1,500 entries in less than 10 days, not just in Marathi, but English and Hindi as well. So the highlight for me was that 50% of these entries, again, came from non-metro cities like Divyanagar, Dhamodi, all small towns, right? Wow. So this just goes on to show the power and ingenuity of the young minds that are there in the region, really looking to express themselves through the medium of stories and looking to connect with each other when it comes to storytelling.
Yeah, one of the things that your answer makes me think of is just sometimes localization is just sort of shining a light on existing use cases from the market, right? Use cases that you want others to be inspired by and emulate. And you guys have at Wattpad done an extraordinary job, not just instigating use cases, but shining a light on what's happened in the market. I want to build on something Devashish said, and begin to ask Raghav and then you again, Devashish, just sort of about how you've thought about the role of government, or maybe better put, sort of public institutions in your India go-to-market, right? In Coursera's case, obviously there's a Skill India initiative. At a big picture level, there's certainly the Coursera for Government product. Obviously, the government of India has something called Swayam going. How have you thought, Raghav, just big picture, just about the role of public institutions in finding your way into success in the Indian market? Having led Google, YouTube, and Twitter's go-to-markets in India, and of course advising many companies at Times Bridge, I've often made it a point to note the importance of finding constructive relationships and ways to partner up. I'm just sort of curious how you guys have thought about this.
I'd broadly say there have been two broad themes. One is, working with governments as a partner, as a challenge to take education to their to citizens and to officials. And the second, in a space like higher education, the government as a regulator also has an important role to play, and engaging and partnering with the government on that side has been the second element of it. So, like you were referring to as well, Coursera for Governments is a platform which is built to be able to work with governments. What's happening, this was happening pre-pandemic, it's accelerated post-pandemic, is because of automation, because of technologies. Many governments are seeing significant job losses happening in their countries, in their states, and so on. And so what we are doing globally and in India as well as a part of Coursera for Governments is saying, look, we can bring job-relevant education to your officials, to your citizens, so that the impact of technology, impact of the pandemic can be mitigated and job losses can be reduced. So last year, we launched a program globally as well as in India, which was Coursera for Workforce Recovery. And as a part of that, we partnered with, I think, the governments of Uttar Pradesh, the governments of Tamil Nadu, Telangana, Odisha, and Kerala. And to each of these organizations, to the skill development or the education arms of these state governments, we made a fairly large chunk of licenses to the Coursera platform available as scholarships, that they could provide those to folks who had lost jobs and help them reskill to then be able to come back into the work stream. So that's been a significant element of this. We are seeing this initiative accelerate quite a bit globally as well, Rishi, where in smaller countries, entire countries are tying up with Coursera to say, look, our industries are changing. Let's bring the job relevant content for digital skills, for data related skills, and so on and so forth, so that we can get ready for the future. The second element of all of this has been partnering and engaging with the government as the regulator of practices within, the government. And in my role, across Asia Pacific, I get to see what governments in other countries have been doing as well. And the government's new education policy, which was announced last year, is very future looking, right? To be able to say, look, we'll open up the education sector to bring about higher quality, to bring about flexibility, to bring about collaboration, is actually ahead of many countries. And to be able to bring Coursera as a part of that, to say, how do we bring content from leading Indian institutions and take that to Indian audiences and global audiences as well, but also to be a part of the new education policy and enabling the government's ideology around multidisciplinary learning, around taking education global. Some of those have been important aspects to it as well. But both are, I would say, critical elements to kind of thinking about how to be able to serve the market significantly.
Amazing. Yeah, I know. I think multi-pronged, right? You guys have been multi-pronged and operating at all levels in your interactions with public institutions. Here in the U.S., often I see and talk to companies who see in markets like this, you don't interact with public sector too much, right? You sort of run away. In India, I often tell people run towards because public institutions do play an outsized role in market conditions, market acceleration, and market zeitgeist. Devashish, you mentioned your partnership with the government of Maharashtra, which went so well. I was just sort of curious, where does that come from? Is that new muscle for Wattpad? Do you guys do that generally? It just really struck me, your all's willingness to go do that partnership. Sounds like it was a success.
Yeah, I mean, this is something which we did for the first time. And I'll be honest, like Wattpad, being a B2C platform, never really thought of, going the government route in other countries. However, in India, when this opportunity came up, and it was an inbound thing, which is very rare for a government opportunity, we got excited by just the whole premise that a government institution will be, like willing to partner with on a level which is non-education. It was sort of like the whole premise was it was outside classroom creative work, right? Like that's what they want to promote, and that became very interesting angle for us to also explore now more aggressively with other partners. That how can we bring our platform to young students who are in school or in colleges to create their profile and discover their talent for writing, as well as discover stories that they really want to read, and not just read something which is being pushed on them through the media. So this particular vertical would not have gained our attention had it not been for the Maharashtra government partnership. But going forward, I think we are now trying to more formalize and figure out a strategic move on how we can do it on even a bigger level.
Yeah.
Given that the pilot with the Maharashtra government went really well.
Yeah, I mean, I used to think years ago that, when you're thinking about a continent like India, there are very few nodes that give you scale, given just how big the place is. And, aside from, cricket and a couple of other things, right? Public institutions really are just represent opportunities to drive scale in your story. And so fantastic. So last question, just a closing question for you all, to closing comment, just question about the future. We these days, especially during COVID, many of us are reading stories about the rise of non-English users on the internet in India, the further penetration of digital into smaller towns. I think I saw a statistic the other day that 900 million internet users by 2025. What are your growth expectations for the market? How do you manage expectations, right? Because a lot of the India work, there's so much global storytelling around it. It's important to think surgically and thoughtfully around and with precision around what exactly you're aiming at in the coming years. But are you all bullish about the years ahead, kind of in this post-COVID-ish world emerging? And if you could just give us a glimpse into what you're thinking about in the coming year or two, that would be fun. Raghav, do you want to offer a final reflection?
Yeah, I mean, I say this to my team often, right? We are solving once in a lifetime kind of a problem, and it's a big opportunity to be able to solve a problem like this, right? So if you look at we are serving two constituents, right? Students in higher education and working professionals who want to get ahead in their careers. If I just look at the first part of it, students in higher education, there are 38 million students in higher education in India today. And based on various statistics, this is likely to get to 75 million students in higher education over the next 5 to 10 years. And for us to be able to serve that audience, right, through Coursera for Campus is significant. To be able to go in a country from 40 million students to 75 million students, there is no way that we have the land and the money to be able to set up so many more universities and campuses. And a lot of these students will get served through online education and through fully online degrees as well. And so one of our big, focus areas is, can we bring top quality online degrees from globally the top institutions and locally the top institutions and take those to these individuals. And as I was mentioning earlier, back in 2016, we were about 1 million learners on a B2C platform in India. In January last year, it was about 5 million. And currently it is 13 because COVID obviously pushed growth in online education very, very significantly. So globally, the largest number of new learners that joined Coursera anywhere in the world was actually in India, which actually ends up putting a lot of pressure on all of us to say to global that, look, is this growth that we can sustain or not? But just given the size and scale of the problem and the opportunity to solve it, I think is going to see sustained growth opportunities. And then on the, on the corporate side, of course, with technology changing so much, I think people in India completely believe that technology is impacting jobs and automating jobs in India as well. It's not just a Western world problem. It's not that automation will take away jobs in manufacturing in the Western world, but not to take away jobs in manufacturing in India. So a lot of companies are actually investing in learning and development of their talent. If you look at technology services, IT services, India, 7 million people. If you look at banking and the BFSI sector, another 8 million people, and I could go on and on and on. But those numbers are very large, where one needs to bring skills of the future, content of the future, get folks ready for jobs of the future. So I think overall, and I won't put a number to it because I don't know, but I think there should be very significant continued momentum towards what we're doing.
Well, I mean, as you said at the beginning of your answer, obviously a historic opportunity, once in a lifetime, educating a country, and I know you look after other markets as well at scale is and doesn't happen that often. So I think an opportunity many around the world would envy the opportunity to make such a big impact, and it's been such a delight for us, me personally, and for all of us to watch you guys succeed these last 4 or 5 years. So thanks, Raghav. Devashish, how do you think about the future in terms of Wattpad and building on all you guys have already achieved?
Yeah, I actually echo the same sentiment as Raghav. I mean, it's once in a lifetime opportunity in India for any digital business. I mean, if you look at the Indian content industry, it's just booming, right? And all kinds of business models, all kinds of platforms are coming up. But Wattpad, we pride ourselves because we have something which not many platforms are able to offer, which is millions of data backstories from Indian writers that can power not just local entertainment landscape, but also the international entertainment landscape, right? So we already know that Indian stories have a history of traveling beyond borders.
Right.
The biggest example is Bollywood, right? And if you turn on Netflix or go to a theater in any part of the world, you would see easily a Bollywood blockbuster alongside the latest Hollywood film. I mean, Indian films now even have big audiences in China. Who would have thought that, a few years back? So we really want to harness that power because if you go back to a vision, which is to entertain and connect the world through stories, we definitely want to bring this vision to India and elevate our Indian emerging writers and give them a global platform. Given that is one of our strengths that we are able to offer that nobody else is able to match, right? So that's really, I would say, like the key direction that we would be moving towards when we talk about the next 2 to 3 to 5 years in the Indian region.
Well, fantastic. I mean, what gets me excited about Wattpad is, in some ways, one way to think about it is cultivating creativity at scale, right? I mean, the idea that you're getting folks to express and create stories in a vacuum is cool because there's content and data and those stories can travel. But even bigger picture, in a market like India, cultivating creativity at scale as a wider national mission, I think is remarkable. It certainly helped me in my career, and I'm glad you guys are standing up for that. And so thank you both for joining us for the Think India event. Thank all of you in the audience for listening to our panel. Congratulations to both of you, Raghav and Devashish, for your remarkable success in India. It's been great working with both of you over the years. And with that, enjoy the rest of Think India. Thank you.